We are back playing some buy, sell, hold with two difficult receivers to kind of determine what to do with them. And it's starting off with Tee Higgins, and both these guys are guys that can be good for rebuilding teams, for contending teams. Again, starting off with Tee Higgins, who is still only 25 years old. He's going to play the entire season as a 25-year-old. Keep trade cuts, wide receiver 23. Startup, he's going as the wide receiver 23 at early 6th, maybe late 5th. And then a couple trades there that are considered equal, take it with a grain of salt, but the 109 or a mid-2025 first, we see his numbers there where back-to-back years of being a top 15 per game, by the way, not overall, but per game receiver, 13 points and 12.4 in half PPR. And then last year was a tough year. He was injured. Burrow was injured. All that stuff. So, Brian, it's difficult. Are you buying, selling, or holding Tee Higgins?
Yeah, it is difficult for sure. I think he's a solid hold. I don't think I'm gonna sell him for just the 109. Just given, I'm just gonna call the 109 Bo Nix, basically. Where Brock Bowers or pick your flavor, Jonathan Brooks. I think that we've seen enough from Higgins where he could be the number one guy on whatever team he plays for that's not the Bengals, given that Chase is there. But he is a solid ass wide receiver. He's very talented. We've seen him have these huge games over the years, yeah, it's easy to kind of hold last year against him, but like you said, riddled with injuries. Everything that could go wrong for the Bengals did go wrong, basically. And yeah, I just think that we've seen enough from him. He's got I'd say a very safe floor and a pretty good ceiling. So I'm not selling him for the 109. I'd rather have him on my roster than Bo Nix. Sorry, Bo Nix. I'm just gonna keep picking on him.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough because if it's the 107, you could potentially get a Dunze, and I think I would do that, or I would do that. Not think I would. But yeah, the 109, you're out of a Dunze, probably Bowers range. But Bo Nix is if he turns into even a top 15 quarterback, he's more valuable than Tee Higgins in Superflex, by the way. It is really, really tough. But I think I'm there with you about the holding. If I could buy them, if it's the 111, 112, I think I'd buy them.
Oh, definitely.
And just what you said, I think he's playing with the Bengals this year. I don't really see Bengals are trying to win the Super Bowl, if they were going to trade him, they would have gotten something in the draft to where they could use this year. Why would you trade him now, I guess? So I think he's going to play with the Bengals. Hopefully Joe Burrow's healthy. And we've seen, look at 2022 and 2021. That's what he can do, even with Jamar Chase there. The Bengals, that's with a healthy Joe Burrow. So we see what he can do. And then there's the upside of all right, what if Jamar Chase gets hurt? What if he gets hurt?
Don't say it.
Even for just a few games. I'm looking at trying to pull up, from 2022, Jamar Chase missed 4 games. I think it was weeks 8 through 12. And Tee Higgins was the wide receiver 10 in those they had a bye during that week. So it was 4 games. Wide receiver 10 in points per game. That's his upside. He's going to become, a low-end wide receiver 1 if Chase gets hurt. If he's not and everyone's healthy, he's probably a mid wide receiver 2 in fantasy, right? So, yeah, I think I agree with you. It's kind of a hold, and he's still young enough. He'll be 26 if he hits free agency next year. Someone's going to give him a good amount of money and make him potentially their wide receiver 1. So
for sure.
But there's also that what if he's the wide receiver 1 for a crappy team, or what if he goes to another team that's already established, another Jamar Chase, but on another team. But I guess you don't have to worry about that too much because we've seen him produce with Chase. So, and Tyler Boyd's gone. I know that doesn't seem like much, but that's over the last 3 years. That's about 90, 95 targets gone. Is that all going to go to just like Jermaine Burton, or probably not? Probably going to maybe 10 more, 15 more for Chase and Higgins. Who knows? So it's tough though.
Yeah.
So what is the mid 25 first? Are you still like, if you knew it was like the 106 next year, would you do that, or just not the class? Probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say honestly, I don't have a strong opinion on the class for next year. Like, I mean, when I say don't have a strong opinion, I have no opinion because I haven't really looked into it very much. Just not at that time of the year for me, anyways. But I think it's. I don't know. I don't know about that one. It obviously sounds super sexy, but at the same time, it's like you're losing a year of production, and you're losing not just production. You're losing a year of Tee Higgins production, which is solid, Yeah. And you mentioned Tyler Boyd. Mixon's gone too. That was 64 targets last year. So there you go.
50 targets, well.
Yeah. So. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, not that Higgins, he lives right in that 110 range for targets, Seemed like he was on pace for a little bit more, but no, not really. I was going to say last year, but, 76 targets in 12 games. I mean, the dude is good. I don't think he needs, 150 targets, nor do I think he's going to get 150 targets for Cincinnati this year. But, I mean, you can't disregard the contract year narrative either. He's playing on the franchise tag, so he's getting paid. He's getting paid $22 million this year, basically. And obviously, it seems like he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder right now. But I don't know if anyone really is super surprised by their move to they have to pay Burrow and Chase. Like he was always going to be kind of third fiddle to those guys, but I don't blame him for wanting to get paid because he deserves it. So
it's interesting you brought up the contract thing, because I also do think that could work another way, in which say, my groin hurts, I'm not going to risk it, I'm going to sit out. Maybe a little bit more likely to sit out. But then I think if he does do that, if he had a monster year last year, a Tee Higgins year last year, I think he'd be more willing to do that, but he didn't.
Right.
So then you'd be looking at 2 years. So
yeah, I was going to say that exact thing. It's like if he had one of his normal years last year, it would be a different story. That would be it would be more worrisome for sure. But I'm not worried about that. I don't think.
Yeah.
We shall see.
So our next guy is Michael Pittman. Is 26 and a half. So he'll turn 27 in December, if I'm doing math right around there, November, December. Keep trade cut has him wide receiver 18. He's actually going as wide receiver 16 in startup in the 406. Essentially worth the same as Tee Higgins, the 108, which is interesting. We were talking about that. Then you look at his numbers. That's half PPR. And again, that ranking, wide receiver 24, 28, and 18 is in total points per game. Points per game. Total points, he's finished higher. That's because he has been playing basically every game, every year. I think he's only missed one game in the last 3 years, or 2 games, it looks like. So his points per game numbers is not as sexy as his finishes, 24, 28, and 18. I'll start off here, and what I'll say is I prefer Tee Higgins over Michael Pittman, I think.
Yeah, easy.
But if you asked me that a week ago without really looking at the stats, I think I would have said Pittman over Tee Higgins. But it just is. I don't know what the upset, because you look at the targets, you're talking about 100. He's had over 140 targets each of the last 2 years. Had his best year last year, 1,150 yards. He's not a big touchdown guy. He hasn't had more than 6 in a year. He's a big catch guy. He's had basically over 100 or more the last 2 years, 99 and 109. Doesn't put up a huge yards per reception. right around 10 average over the last 2 years. I just think his upside is not there. The upside for Pittman, like I think he's a very good wide receiver too. In terms of like, all right, he's going to be there and he's going to give you a solid, 11, 12 points half PPR average. I just don't know if he can get to what we saw with Tee Higgins of, 12 and a half, 13 points. And then you throw in top is there's Anthony Richardson. How much are they actually going to throw? Which we don't really know, like whether someone tells you they do or not. Like we don't. He played in basically 2 games. One of them he threw 37 times. Another one he threw 25 times. So, and we don't know what the target share for Pittman's going to be. Josh Downs is there. They drafted A.D. Mitchell.
Jonathan Taylor.
So, Jonathan Taylor is always there. Yep. I don't know if I'm buying or selling or rolling. If I could get the 107, I'm going to sell. The 108 makes it a little different for me. I think I'm still going to sell Pittman, though, for the 108. I think I am.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because him and Higgins, like I totally agree with you. I'd rather have Higgins, especially you can get him basically 2 rounds later in startup ADP right now. It's funny because like their stat lines are pretty similar except for the targets and the catches kind of a thing. And like you said, like we don't know what that's going to look like this year if we get a full year of Anthony Richardson. Like you said, not a big touchdown guy and stuff, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, PPR, it definitely changes things a bit. I think we're always thinking, basically super flex is always kind of a given when we talk about these dynasty things, but we usually shoot for half PPR, so it kind of like evens the playing field a little bit. I think if I can get the 108, I'm selling. And I don't feel super strong about that for sure. But I do think wide receiver 16 is basically about his, like almost his ceiling, if where he'll finish in the year. But I think he has a really safe floor too. Like, targets are earned. But again, like there's a lot of question marks around this team in general about like what their game is going to look like. So I do like the player. I feel like he's been like a little inflated in value the last couple of years. Myself included. Like I was definitely like on that train for a while, but I mean, geez, like wide receiver. I mean, they've got to be in like a giant tier, basically. I was gonna say if you could trade Pittman for Higgins and like a little something, it's like I would do that. I would do it straight up, but I think it's kind of harder to trade within the position, 1-for-1 kind of a thing. And I wouldn't feel like super strongly like, oh, definitely Higgins, but I definitely lean that way. So I'm gonna say sell, but not a super strong sell. Closer to a hold than a buy for sure, but I'm going to say sell.
Yeah, it is tough. I was just looking at the target share and basically the 2 games that Anthony Richardson played last year, and it was like 30. It was 11 targets out of 35 passes, like 33%, and then 5 targets when he threw for 25 passes. So 20%? Yeah, 20%. So
there's just not enough. There's no sample size. Basically. Yeah, there's just no stats to be had. You could spin it either way, and the truth is, it's just there's no real data.
The only thing I do know, the only thing I'd be comfortable betting on when it comes to Anthony Richardson and the Colts offense is that he's gonna probably rush for 8+ touchdowns. Anthony Richardson, and really good chance to get double digits, but I'll keep it conservative at 8, which just shows like it could be 15. Like he ran for 4 in the 2.5 games or so that he played, So I do feel comfortable that that's going to happen around the goal line. So yeah, I just think that touchdown total for Pittman is probably going to be where it's been in his career of 6, 7 touchdowns. Which is fine, but yeah, I don't know. It's really tough. What were you gonna say?
I'm just looking at the sheet that you keep referencing, the startup ADP, the I don't remember who made this. You've said his name before.
South Harmon.
Oh yeah, okay.
Guys.
Yeah, shout out to those guys because this thing is very helpful. I'm in a startup right now, and I'm using this to my advantage, hopefully, but I'll probably just suck. Anyways, I mean, the two receivers, he's right smack dab in the middle of the 4th round in startup, right? Michael Pittman. Odunze and Waddle go at the beginning of the 4th round. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I'd rather take shots on those guys. And then the 3 receivers after him at the end, like right at the turn of the end of the 4th round, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, DJ Moore. It's like, I'd rather have those 3 guys also. So I think that being said, like, I think he is a little overvalued. So it's just kind of reinforcing my sell, I guess. It's like, I would definitely put him right after those guys. So that would put him at wide receiver 20. Like, and honestly, even like Metcalf, like, is like close. I think I'd rather still have Pittman, but I don't know. I don't feel that strong about that.
The DJ Moore one's interesting, just because we don't know how that offense is necessarily going to turn out, and like Caleb is a rookie, he could struggle, and so then you're eating up a year of DJ Moore, and then he'll be 28. So one thing to say about like just the Colts in general and their passing is they're going to run very similar to what the Eagles are running, this RPO offense. And that really does benefit the number 1 and number 2 targets, because in a run pass option, the play is designed to be a run. So offensive linemen are blocking as a run play, which means you need to throw the ball. If you don't hand it off, you can't sit back there and wait for someone who already the pass is going to. Which is why, in 2022, even though the Eagles only threw the ball 460 times and Jalen Hurts had 3,700 yards, we saw A.J. Brown put up 1,500 yards, right? We saw Devontae Smith put up over 1,000 or 1,000 yards. And we saw even Goddard put up, over 700 yards for a tight end in 12 games. So because it was just all funneled to those 3 guys, essentially. So that could be the same, like a 1,500-yard receiver. You wouldn't think that would happen with a guy throwing for 3,700, but because it's that RPO style, I think that's a big reason why. So that's just something to think about. And
sure. I don't think necessarily what happened. I know we're not. All right. Well, now we're talking about DJ Moore. I'm not counting on him to repeat his last year, like that might be his best year of his career, it's quite possible. But I think his floor is in the ballpark of that. Not necessarily that, not like 1,364 yards, 8 touchdowns, like that's what he did last year. But I mean, we know the dude's good, obviously rookie quarterback and stuff, but the age is not really a concern for me, because I think you've said it a few times as far as, I don't know. Stop thinking in like 5-year windows, right? Like in fantasy, like or Dynasty. Think in a 2-year window, 3-year window at the most. And 27 does not scare me.
Yeah, no, you're right. You are right. Well, good. We'll finish up there. It was good conversations about 2 interesting receivers. Tee Higgins and Michael Pittman. We'll be back looking at a couple of tight ends. So we will catch you guys all in that video.